recording in progress, so watch your language and your facial expressions. So before we get started, just a quick announcement. We will not be having a December program. Instead, we will be having the Christmas bird count, which will be on December the 18th. If you would like to participate and you're not already part of a team, get in contact with Lottie Bushman, and her email address is in my article in the November chat, which you can find online, or you should have gotten an email if you're a member. You do not need to be a member of Columbia Audubon to participate in the Christmas bird count. So we're always looking for people to help us with that count. And then that evening we'll be doing a Zoom meeting. We felt that it probably wasn't still not time to do a chili supper, so we'll be doing a Zoom meeting to go over the results for that day. That's all the announcements. In January, we'll have a program. It'll be Paige Whittick from the Missouri River Bird Observatory, and she'll be talking about bird nests. So with that, I don't have any other announcements, so we'll start with the program. Tonight we welcome two representatives of the Missouri Parks Association who are joining us to provide an update about our state parks. MPA is a not-for-profit citizens organization founded nearly 40 years ago and dedicated to the protection, enhancement, and interpretation of our state parks and historic sites. From St. Louis, we have Shirley Wolverson, who is vice president. Shirley is a biologist and air pollution specialist who has worked in the air pollution control department with St. Louis Health Department and for the State Division of Environmental Quality in the Department of Natural Resources. She has done volunteer work for numerous environmental organizations and has a lifelong interest in parks and historic sites. And joining us from Kansas City, so we got both ends of the state, is Kendra Varns Wallis. She's the executive director of the Missouri Parks Association. She has a degree in Parks, Recreation, and Tourism from MU. She began working in the facility and visitor services for Missouri State Parks and their headquarters in Jeff City. And she had the opportunity to visit nearly every state park and historic site in the system. Later, she worked in the Kansas City Outreach Office, where she coordinated MPA's Kansas City Urban Populations Outreach Program, also known as UPOP. And we have an UPOP program here in Columbia that's administered by the Friends of Rockbridge, and along with other programs. She is the first executive director of MPA, and she represents the Association on Park Issues and Legislative Initiatives, as well as managing membership drives and fundraising. So without any further ado, I will turn the program over to Shirley and Kendra.
Thanks, Jim. Shirley, can you share your screen? Okay.
And everybody can see it, I assume?
Yes.
Okay.
See it.
There's a thing recorded, and then you can either push leave meeting or push got it. And I guess I'm supposed to push got it to make this thing go away.
Yes. Yeah, just push the you got it button on there and that will go away.
Oh, somebody heard me.
Yep.
Okay. I pushed it.
Okay, so we are ready to go. Thank you for inviting MPA to speak tonight. We appreciate the opportunity to talk about our organization and give an update about what is happening with Missouri State Parks and historic sites. Jim gave us a really good introduction. So that was very helpful. It kind of took up like our first 3 slides, but we'll get back into what we're going to cover slide, and then we'll go from there. We're going to talk about who is MPA, funding sources for state parks, new parks, Missouri's missing masterpieces, current issues, and stewardship updates. And many of you are members or aware of our organization, but for those who are not familiar, we wanted to give you a brief background of MPA to get us started. So like Jim said, the Missouri Parks Association, MPA, is a nonprofit citizens organization, independent and nonpartisan, dedicated to the protection, enhancement, and interpretation of Missouri state parks and historic sites. Founded in 1982 at a time of financial crisis for the park system, MPA has been a steadfast supporter and tireless defender of the state park system. The association's members and volunteers continue to support the threefold mission of the Missouri State Park System through education and advocacy, and remain vigilant to prevent actions that threaten our parks. As you can see on the slide, MPA has produced 2 editions of Exploring Our Legacy State Park book that tells the complete story of the park system, written by Susan Flotter, who's on the call too, and produces heritage newsletter to keep the public up to date about the park system. Then we also go to Jefferson City, to the Capitol, to advocate to the legislative. Sorry, my cat in the background is meowing, so it's throwing me off. So we go to Jeff City to talk to legislators and talk about bills and different issues that impact state parks. In addition to advocacy to ensure an excellent park system that is relevant for all Missourians, we strive to connect Missourians to the outdoors, with a priority on underserved populations, including urban and rural youth and seniors. So this picture that we have is MPA's Underserved Populations Outreach Program, or UPOP as we call it, and it introduces underserved youth to our state park system. MPA provides funding to partner organizations in Kansas City, St. Louis, Columbia, and Joplin. And new for 2020, MPA received a grant to expand the program to the Ozarks. And youth from the Salem area visited Echo Bluff, Montauk, and Current River State Park. UPOP field trips include activities like fishing, bird watching, and bike rides at Katy Trail State Park. The activities are free so that participants can take part in the program regardless of their economic ability. And in Columbia, MPA partners with Friends of Rockbridge to deliver the program. Then Seniors to State Parks program is a partnership between Missouri State Parks and MPA that provides field trips and a tram for seniors to explore state parks and enjoy Missouri's outdoors and its past. This program was first launched in 2015 and is funded by MPA through a generous endowment received from Ben and Betty Breeding to be used for this purpose. And it takes place throughout the state. Ensuring Missourians understand the need for an adequate and consistent base of financial support for the park system is a key task of MPA. In 1984, MPA spearheaded the petition that led to the passage of the park soils and water sales tax and has worked to get it reapproved by voters in 1988, 1996, 2006, and in 2016 when it passed by 80% with a majority in every county in the state. Half of the dedicated constitutional tax of 0.1% provides about 3/4 of the division's budget for operation and development of state parks. And one of the greatest things about Missouri State Park System is there's no entrance fees to get in. If you have traveled to other states, you'll more than likely pay a fee just to drive through the gate. And thanks to the dedicated sales tax, Missouri State Parks continues to be free and a resource for all. One of the biggest undertakings ever for Missouri State Parks is 28 projects to be funded by revenue bonds at 22 different parks across all regions of the state. The bonds were approved during the 2021 legislative session, and $60.2 million in bonds were sold on Tuesday, October 19th, 2021. In response to a demand for more lodging opportunities, the revenue bond project proposal included numerous campground expansions and full service cabins, as well as camper cabins and yurts. The projects were identified and selected using occupancy data for camping and lodging, visitor comments, and park staff recommendations. The first 4 projects are projected to start in 2022 and include building new cabins at Johnson Shut-ins, campground upgrades at Montauk and Roaring River, and electrical upgrades at Onondaga Cave. Renovations are slated to start in 2024 on a historic limestone lodge at Babbler State Park that was previously used by the Division of Youth Services. The historic limestone lodge was built in 1938 by the Civilian Conservation Corps, and completion of all the projects is estimated over a 5-year period. Project timeline with detailed project brochures can be found at stateparks.com/revenue bonds if you're interested.
Can everybody mute their,
Okay, so
can everybody mute their computers, please?
there we go. Okay. The additional state park funding comes from revenues generated in the state park system and some federal funds. Some examples are fees from camping and federal grants. MPA membership was updated during the State of State Parks address of the American Rescue Plan Act. ARPA funds are federal money that has already been approved at the federal level to be used by the state. Park staff worked on a list of priorities for state parks, submitted the request through a cabinet review process for categories that include broadband, water, wastewater, and revitalization projects. The selected projects will be included in a budget bill for approval through the next legislative review process. And we will know more about what the projects that were selected in January. Missouri State Parks and Historic Sites are continually working on maintenance issues throughout the state. Some recent big maintenance issues have impacted Katy Trail State Park. The Katy Trail Salt Creek Bridge was destroyed in 2019 by Missouri River flooding. A project design for the new bridge has been completed and bids were opened earlier in September. The contractor has been hired and work will begin this fall, and a new bridge is expected to open next spring. Also in 2019, a 300-foot section of the bluff collapsed and covered Katy Trail State Park near Portland, closing the trail to the public in the area. Because there wasn't an option for a road detour, state park construction crews constructed a temporary detour around the rock slide, and a permanent fixture is currently being reviewed. And just a note, since you're near the I-70 bridge, on July 1st, 2021, the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission announced the selection of a design build contractor to replace the I-70 Missouri River Bridge near Rocheport. Monthly progress meetings are taking place to discuss Katy Trail impacts. Potential impacts include short-term closures, temporary trail reroutes, and some long-term closures. But every effort will be made to limit the complete closures as much as possible. The contractor is required to give state parks 30 days notice for any complete closures so they can notify trail visitors. So now I'm going to hand the presentation over to Shirley to talk about Missouri Missing Masterpieces.
In 1992, I'm not muted, am I?
No, you.
Okay. In 1992, the Missouri Division of State Parks drafted an expansion plan for the state park and historic site system. The primary goal of this plan was to identify notable gaps or missing masterpieces in the system where specific natural, cultural, and recreational resources were either not represented or were underrepresented. Additionally, the plan developed criteria by which further gaps could be recognized. The division still uses these criteria for evaluating potential new areas, engaging whether these areas are worthy of inclusion into the state park system. In 2004, the division conducted a survey to gather public input regarding the standards the division uses to determine if potential new areas are worthy. Additionally, the survey allowed participants to suggest specific natural, cultural, or recreational areas they felt were missing from the system. There was overwhelming consensus with standards used by the division. Still needed, according to the survey, were expansion of geographic location or distribution and accessibility, as well as preserving green space and expanding interpretation of Native American and African American history and culture, immigrant history, watershed and wetland protection, and prairies in unique geologic areas. There was also concern expressed about protection for natural areas that are at risk or that would protect wildlife and endangered species. Specifically, the criteria the division uses to review new areas for their natural resource potential include significance, regional representation, and natural themes. There are criteria used for evaluating potential new historic sites, include significance, chronology, geography, themes, and resource integrity. When assessing new areas for their recreation potential, statewide appeal, resource-based, and sufficient acreage are the three criteria used. Areas of the state they felt were underserved by state parks were Northwest Missouri's Les Hills, bordering Missouri River, the South Central Ozarks and the Central Plateau, the big rivers, especially the Missouri, and the Boot Heel region along the Mississippi. Since 2004, a number of state parks have been added that we believe fill many of these gaps. This report on missing Missouri masterpieces is available online on the Missouri State Parks website.
In Bryant Creek State Park and Sappington African American Cemetery State Historic Site are two recent additions to the system that fill gaps identified in the Missing Masterpieces expansion plan. Missouri State Parks held the third conceptual development plan meeting for Bryant Creek on September 28th, and the final plan is complete. Bryant Creek State Park is separated into two sections, as you can tell from the map, by Highway N. The northern section, where approximately 1,478 acres of mature forest and riparian corridor is to be preserved, and the southern section, where approximately 1,439 acres of regenerating forest and glade is to be restored. From the CDP plan, the best support preservation and restoration efforts, development should remain minimal in nature, establishing a limited development trails-oriented park. The next steps will be linking the proposed CDP development objectives to the project design. The first phase will consist of a parking, vault toilet, ADA trail footprint in the north day use area. Further north day use development will be parking expansion, paved ADA leisure trail, and a trailhead. And then in phase 2 will be requested through the 2022 legislative process and the fiscal 2023 budget, and will include development of the south day use area, encompassing parking and a multi-use trail, as well as additional trails in the north day use area. And on Saturday, June 5th, the Missouri Department of Natural Resources dedicated Sappington African American Cemetery State Historic Site as the 92nd facility in the Missouri State Park system. This site is near Arrow Rock and is managed by the Arrow Rock State Historic Site staff. By 1880, Black Americans comprised more than half of the population of Arrow Rock, Missouri. Many of these formerly enslaved individuals provided labor to build many structures in the town and to cultivate labor-intensive crops grown in this area before the Civil War. This cemetery stands as a reminder of the Black culture and contribution to this area and Missouri. And next, we're going to talk about some current issues that MPA is currently working on. As we all know, as you all are probably aware of, the Gans Creek Wild area at Rock Ridge Memorial State Park, Canton Estates development. The potential development is located directly north of the eastern section of Gans wild area. When contacted by Jan Weaver of Friends of Rock Ridge Memorial State Park, MPA kicked into high gear and we wrote a letter of opposition to the Columbia Senior Planner and later to the city council members and the mayor. An alert was sent out to our membership asking them to do the same. Dr. Susan Flotter, well-respected Columbia resident and founding member of MPA, spoke at the planning and zoning meeting on April 8th of 2021. As we understand now, a request from the developer to waive the 12-month waiting period has been denied, and the council may work with the Boone County Commission to protect the sensitive areas surrounding the park. Just please contact us if the situation changes, since we count on our local partners and members to be our eyes and ears, and they can count on us to take action as appropriate to protect our parks and wildlands and historic sites.
Levens Point State Park was purchased in 2016 with settlement funds from ASARCO, then tangled up in the transition to a new administration. In recent years, 11 Point State Park has come under scrutiny by certain Oregon County residents and members of the Missouri legislature. MPA strongly supports the preservation, restoration, and interpretation of 11 Point State Park, one of the state's most outstanding natural landscapes identified in park plans since the masterpieces were developed in 1992. There has been an ongoing lawsuit over the federal easement, as well as bills introduced in the Missouri legislature to try to sell the park. In September 2020, the circuit court issued a judgment ordering divestiture of the easement. On October 19th, last month, the appeal for the lawsuit was heard by the Southern District Court of Appeals in Poplar Bluff. MPA had participated in an amicus brief with other environmental and conservation groups, and we received the following summary from Governor Nixon. Quote, "The argument went well. As I had thought might occur, a substantial amount of the judge's interest was on the procedure issues with a substantial focus on standing, the chapter on administrative rules, and the remedy. All of these are much tougher questions for our opponents. The state focused also on the fact that no one from Parks has indicated an intent at this time to violate the easement. Any changes in the future would only be done with our federal partners. It is also clear to me that regardless of this Southern District opinion, the losing party will seek transfer to the Supreme Court." So that's what former Governor Nixon thought. I was down there for the appeal hearing, as was the governor and some other MPA and state representatives. We are still awaiting the ruling on this.
So the second CDP survey for Ozark Mountain State Park is now available for review, and the 30-day comment period is open with the survey online. And for those who may not know, Ozark Mountain State Park was one of the 4 parks that were purchased at the end of the Nixon administration. The mission of Ozark Mountain State Park is to provide natural resource stewardship that preserves and restores native glades and woodlands, protects the aquatic diversity and water quality of Rourke Creek and its groundwater recharge areas, protects cultural elements, and provides outdoor recreation and interpretation opportunities that will enable the appreciation of the natural and cultural resources provided by the area. At this point in the CDB process, MPA is pleased with the proposed site goals and development objectives. MPA is supportive of the development of the park that complements the natural resource stewardship, protecting the glades and water quality and cultural resources of the area. Missouri State Parks received a proposal to change the name of the park from a local group, quote, "The current name, in our opinion, does not properly represent our area, as the Ozark Mountain region is quite vast. Bordered by the Missouri River, Mississippi River, Southeast Kansas, and roughly Little Rock, Arkansas. MPA does not have a formal position currently about the name, but is supportive of a name that is reflective of the local resources. And if you've taken this survey, the other name that has been proposed is Shepherd of the Hills. And we'll say that MPA, we do have concerns with naming the park Shepherd of the Hills, which is already a major commercial venture in the area. And we lean towards a name that promotes the significant natural resources of the park. And you can go online to the state park website and complete the survey until December 3rd. And we have that link at the bottom of this slide, and we can also send it out if you'd like it. And also about the Rock Island Corridor. Missouri Parks Association supports the addition of the Rock Island Corridor to the state park system and strongly encourages DNR and Missouri State Parks to fully close on the possession of the corridor in order to secure it for the future. Fundraising continues with the goal of raising $9.8 million by December 31st. And State Parks has said that they are open to extending the time frame to reach the goal and exploring other funding opportunities. And if you don't know what Rock Island Corridor is, Shirley just put up this map. The red trail is Katy Trail State Park. And then this blue part is the Rock Island Spur, which connects the Katy to Kansas City. And then I believe it's kind of like a teal green is the Rock Island Corridor. And that's a proposed, it would be a proposed trail at this point that would be built on the rail bed. And then it'd make a nice big, almost loop throughout the state of almost 400 miles of biking or hiking. And so it'll be similar to the Katy Trail. Okay. So, now we're going to move on to stewardship activities of natural and cultural resources at state parks. We'll talk about the Natural Stewardship Tracker Program, Big Oak Tree State Park, and some cultural resource stewardship examples. MPA supports policies that protect Missouri state parks and historic sites. These crown jewels of the state must be preserved and protected for future generations. State parks and historic sites face many threats, from dangers like invasive species and development to the divesting of public lands. They are our state's greatest collection of natural, historic, and cultural treasures. At its annual meeting, MPA organized a panel of leaders from the past 4 decades of active natural resource stewardship in the state park system to consider the history and current challenges at its annual gathering in 2017. MPA approved a strong resolution urging active stewardship at all levels of the system, administrative, field, and public, and indicated its intent to focus on the cultural realm in the future and monitor the progress in years to come. After the meeting and discussions, park staff created a stewardship trackers and are tracking activities. The natural resource tracker is further along in development, and as of June 21st, they had their first year of data. From July 2020 through June 2021, almost 39,463 total hours have been recorded.
MPA members attended a Lunch and Learn Zoom presentation by Ken McCarty, award-winning Natural Resource Management Program Director, on November 10th. We heard a lot about the history of the park's drainage problems that were complicated by the deliberate levee breach of the St. John's New Madrid floodway and are finally close to being corrected. MPA has been advocating for this park for about 20 years, and you can go online to read the heritage issues from August 2013, June 2011, and April 2002, or just ask Susan Flotter when you see her. She knows it. Plans to reconnect this park to its floodplain and the Mississippi River include return of a seasonal water cycle for the swamp. EPA 319 grant funding has been secured by DNR, and the project will include a perimeter berm, a water inlet from the east and an outlet to the west, and an inlet from the west and outlet to the east that will allow seasonal shallow water inundation in what Ken McCarty called this puddle that's Big Oak Tree State Park. If all proceeds as planned with the final design, bidding, and construction, they may be finished by this time next year. The trail around the artificial lake will remain, and fishing and bird observation areas will be added. The boardwalk will be extended, and there will be a new water trail. If you would like to see what birds have been sighted there recently, you can go to the sparks.mobirds.org, and the ID for this site is 1103, or you can get to that list through the Big Oak Tree website on the State Parks website. In the cultural resources stewardship arena, couple of examples would be at Echo Bluff State Park, Friends of Camp Zoe. That would be Camp Zoe, the kids camp that was there from 1929 to 1986. Raised approximately $25,000 to help stabilize the historic lodge. The South construction crew from the Ozarks region of State Parks construction crew replaced the roof and porch structure. They installed 2 turnbuckles to stabilize the interior framework, painted it, and worked to secure the chimney to the building. In St. Genevieve, the National Park Service had expressed interest in certain properties at the Felix Valley State Historic Site to create a new National Historic Park in St. Genevieve as a unit of the National Park Service. The legislature authorized the parcels be conveyed by legislation passed in 2018 and 2020. The state retained the Felix Valley and Benjamin Shaw houses. This was in line with MPA's recommendation that the state retain at least one significant structure for the state historic site to ensure a strong partnership between Missouri State Parks and the National Park Service. The new national park was established October 20th, 2020. At this juncture, all parcels have been conveyed except for a portion of the Dulcis Kern House, which will convey when a clear title issue has been resolved.
So if you would like to join MPA's advocacy efforts, the association's members and volunteers continue to support the threefold mission of the Missouri State Park System through education and advocacy as described in our presentation. MPA remains vigilant and dedicated to prevent actions that threaten our parks. Our legislative committee monitors bills proposed and hearings conducted and testifies when appropriate, and sends alerts to our membership to take action when necessary. Missouri State Park staff are able to provide fact-based for information-only testimony as it relates to park issues. Advocacy groups like MPA are able to testify and advocate and be for or against a bill or an issue. If you want to be added to join our advocacy and education efforts, you can become a member of MPA at our website, which is on our next slide that has our contact info. I'm the executive director, Shirley is the vice president, and then Terry Whaley is our board president. We have a general info at Missouri Parks email if you ever need to get a hold of us. And then for past and current issues of heritage and how to join MPA, you can visit MissouriParksAssociation.org. So now we will answer any questions you may have, and we will find the answer and get back to you if we don't have the answer at this time.
And we tried to answer all the questions that Nancy had sent us. We didn't do it in the order you asked them, but we think the information was all in there. So if you didn't hear it, feel free to ask the question. And I'll go ahead and stop my sharing. There we go.
I'll go ahead and suggest that if you have a question, to type it in the chat section down at the bottom, and then I'll just read them off, and Kendra and Shirley, because it's hard to see people trying to raise their hand. So if you have any questions, go ahead and type them.
If somebody wanted to jump in with the first one, we could.
Anybody have any questions?
Can I jump in with,
Sure, go ahead, Nancy.
yeah, I just wondered, I didn't hear you talk about, I'm assuming that you all are semi-familiar with what happens in other state park systems, and I may be wrong about that, but in regard to the situation that we're facing with Gans Creek Wild Area and Rockbridge, how do other states deal with this growing problem of the pressure of development? Do they have models for zoning that would be helpful here in Missouri? And in fact, are there other state parks in Missouri that are facing that pressure of development? And how are they dealing with it as well?
And Nancy, I know that you asked that question, and I meant to ask this. We're part of a bigger group that's state park foundations throughout the nation. And I'll be honest, I forgot to email her and ask her, because I was like, well, that makes sense. We need to ask her.
But we're not aware of any. I don't know if Susan is. She has her network extends maybe a little further and history further back than ours, but we're not really aware of anything specific going on in Missouri, other than like the CAFO that tried to go in next to Arrow Rock State Park some years back, that they and we all got on board and fought against that. That's a whole different type of issue than Columbia. That's kind of unique, the way it just wants to expand to the south and kind of encircle the park.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. I mean, to me, it's, the developers have discovered that people really do want to live next to a state park. And so hence they're just going to envelop it. Anyway.
Yeah, and because I remember I graduated from MU in 2005. And I remember that there used to be a Walmart, I think it was on Nifong. And that was like the last building. And then now when I go to Columbia, I'm like, it's going to be connected to Ashland before we know it. It just keeps on going. So I would say that kind of development, in my 12 years of working for state parks, that was probably, I would say this issue at Rockbridge has been the one that I'm most familiar with.
It's pretty unique, and this isn't the first time they've tried to do something there either.
No, it's actually the third one.
Third one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was thinking other state parks, a lot of them, it hasn't had that growth around it. I was just trying to think of ones in the Kansas City area. So, but I made myself a note, and I'm going to email my group, and I will get back to you, Nancy, about the other.
That's fine.
Because now I want to know. I'm I forgot about that. So I apologize.
I think about a park like Castlewood, but Castlewood was already this urban thing before it became a state park. I mean, anyway, we talked about that the other day, that Castlewood, when you go driving into it, it's already a big subdivision, or even get to the gate.
And it's got the river on one side, so that at least keeps any encroachment from coming from that end. But yeah, it's already inundated. And I thought about Babbler, but and it doesn't really have a wild area either, such as what the Gans Creek is. So there's a lot of different issues, and I don't know that any of them have really compared except that the Friends organization, having it there and having eyes on the ground is good in any of these situations to get action going. And you probably should, keep in contact with them, which you're probably, half of you are probably members of both. And in order to know exactly what's going on. Well, somebody forwarded us an email that Columbia Audubon had sent out. We have our person at Burroughs Audubon forwarded it to us, saying that they thought there was going to be a meeting of Boone County and the city council this past Monday.
Yeah.
Did you all ever hear whether anything happened? We couldn't find anything at all about that.
I didn't think, yeah. I'm looking for that. I
didn't see anything. I didn't get anything. I'm on the Friends of Rockbridge board as well as Columbia Audubon's board. And
we checked with Jan and
didn't
she
send
wasn't
anything
aware.
out. Yeah, so I don't know what
Yeah.
happened.
No, we just wanted to double check just to make sure. So
Next question from Dave Badan. What is the status of fundraising for the Rock Island Trail? I guess how close are they to the goal, or?
well, our meeting that we were supposed to have yesterday to get our updates was canceled. But at our last discussion we had, it was around $1 million had been fundraised and committed. So still like 8 million to go on that fundraising.
Yeah, we're wondering if, they've been kind of, well, they had the whole COVID issue slowed things down, but that they've been talking to all these different people and hoping they're planning on getting it to coalesce in December before the 31st. But
Yeah.
if not, like Kendra mentioned in her slideshow, in the slides presentation, Parks has said they're perfectly willing to extend it, but as far as we know, that hasn't happened yet. So we're all waiting to hear.
Yeah.
If y'all got some money, just burn a hole in your pocket.
Got $8 million they're fundraising for. So
Need another Ted and Pat Jones.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? Anybody else got anything?
Did we get most of the rest of your questions, Nancy? Did you hear answers to them?
pretty much, yeah, pretty much. I was curious if, it sounds like, okay, so I worked for state government for a long time and in and around DNR and things, and it was like there was just never enough money for. And then I sent on David Kelly's talk to MPA recently, and it was like, whoa, this is good, it's happy times, and I guess part of me wanted to pinch myself to see if that was really real, because I've never known Missouri State Parks to have enough money. And so I guess part of my question was, are the funds that are generated by this bond issue, are they going to be used for new projects, new capital projects, or are they addressing a backlog of maintenance and needs, or a combination?
Yeah. There's a specific bill, you can look all of it up in, it was HB 19, and it listed all the specific parks and specific projects. And as Kendra mentioned, they're mostly new cabins, new campgrounds, upgrading campgrounds, and putting lights in at Onondaga. So they're all projects that will produce revenue that can be used to pay off the bonds. Okay. But by virtue of doing that, it kind of frees up state parks to use what money they have on maintenance rather than on any new construction. But then the payoff on all these will pay off the bonds. Some of them are 5 or more years to pay off, but they think they'll pretty much be able to finance themselves or fairly quickly within a 5 to 7 year period, I think is what I heard for the ones I've heard. But there is a button on their webpage, and it's a new button that I didn't know was there till Kendra put it in her talk. And I was glad to see it, where you can go to the state parks website and click on the revenue bonds projects button, and it gives a list of all of them. It gives a one-word description of what it's going to be done. Is it cabins or is it campgrounds? And then there's a link to a color brochure that kind of explains what's going to be done in a general way, because the 4 parks I think Kendra mentioned where they're going to start are the only ones they really have the designs for already. If they're from some past, dream they had, and we're able to go right with it. And the others are going to be worked on over the last 5 years. Can you add anything to that, Kendra?
Yeah, and I was gonna say, and then some of like the campground upgrades, they'll be doing some maintenance and repair. And then also it'll be interesting to see, I sat in yesterday on a stimulus spending hearing. There's a lot of money coming into the state through the ARPA funds and infrastructure bill. And DNR talked a lot about wastewater, drinking water upgrades, and some of those projects will take place in state parks too, to help with some maintenance and repair issues. So there's going to be a lot of money coming in, as they said, just trying to figure out how to get all the projects, designed and how long it will take. So, but it, even in like the 12 years I worked for state parks, this is like, I think one of the biggest projects I've ever seen them take on. With
Well, they've been trying to get a revenue bond bill through for a number of years. I remember when Parson was still a senator, he was trying to get I think it was a $60 million revenue bond through. And it was when everybody in the legislature hated everybody in state parks, and it didn't go anywhere. So it took, I think it's been 5 years now since he's been a senator. So I think he really promoted it, and I believe Carol Comer, when she was still director, really promoted it also. So, and there we have it. Finally.
Yeah.
Edge has a question. She wants to know what's specifically going to be done at Current River State Park.
Let me look that up real quick.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I went to the informational meeting down at Current River State Park a couple of months ago, and they already had that little color brochure that you can click on that she's going to look up now. And the way it was explained to me, they're going to be adding cabins on the upper lake. So if you're familiar with Current River State Park, there's like 3 lakes. So the upper one, they've already kind of rerouted the road that comes in to go up a little higher. And somehow or another, they're going to be putting cabins up around that lake. They're going to have to install a whole new drinking water system and wastewater system, and everything is going to have to be done up above where the current gate is. So I think it's up above like the second lake, because everything below that is within the Current Rivers, the National Park Service easement. And so they're pretty well stuck where they can't do any real infrastructure like that in that area. So it'll be pretty much up above. That's why the new cabins will be kind of out of sight of the old lodge and so on. But they're also planning on doing upgrades on that lodge.
Yeah,
Exactly
like
what? I'm not sure if I
yeah.
know. And but the infrastructure is going to be the real big dollar thing. Current River is the park that is getting the most single expenditure.
Yeah, and
of
it's,
all of them.
if it's the former Alton Box Company corporate retreat, if you
Well aware of that.
haven't been down there, so.
I'm
Yeah.
well aware of that. I was a national park ranger at that time, and I began floating the river in 1958. So I'm familiar with the property and the problems with wastewater that it has. And I was distressed when I realized how much money was going into the park down the road, Echo Bluffs, and its development. And I am further stressed to see that now we're going to build cabins at Current River and destroy more habitat. In this case, it sounds like it's going to be right on top of the glade. That is a special habitat, prairie warblers, etc. there. And now we're going to make it people friendly. Thank you very much. I can't support it.
I'm not sure exactly how or where the cabins are going in, but you might start now with talking, getting your information to Ken McCarty or whatever.
I'm sorry, guys. I
See
I
what,
truly am a voice in the wilderness, and I give up.
no, now's the time, because it's gonna be a while before they can get started on that.
No, it will be, excuse me, to use a birding phrase, spishing in the wind. I'm tired of these kinds of fights. Cabins will win, and you know it, because hey, that's jobs, and that's what's going to happen. And
money.
Who needs a blooming prairie warbler? I'm sorry, I'm not in the mood for this. That's just very distressing. We have to, I mean, we totally destroyed a couple of ecosystems at Echo Bluffs so we could have a playground for people out of St. Louis. And now we're going to do the same thing to Current River. And I just can't support that. We're certainly not being habitat and wildlife friendly by building more cabins so people can come and spend the night and have a great time and go home. And I think that's a misrepresentation of what that particular property has to offer. But I am in a minority, and I'm tired of fighting minority battles.
I understand a lot of people love Current River State Park, you know, and they love it as it is, but they voice their love for it. And I guess Parks interprets that as, oh,
Loving it
we need to build here.
Yeah, loving it to death.
Love it to death, right?
Joanne has a follow-up. Joanna?
Mhm.
Joanna, you there?
Can you all hear me?
We can hear you. It's
Yes.
Eric, I guess.
Yep. It's both of us are here. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I'd like, not only do I 100% agree with Edge and we're another voice in that wilderness, but to follow up on it in a slightly different angle, I guess I feel like I would really like to see groups supporting the state parks emphasize things like education and natural resource management over expensive recreation toys. For example, we grew up at Pershing State Park, and the interpretive signs up there are 20 years old if they're a day, at least, and they're utterly out of date and they're pathetic. And as someone who used to do interpretation and teaching for the National Park Service, I go to places like that and just feel horrible that we can build a god awful thing like Echo Bluffs and leave places like Pershing State Park just moldering in the breeze. And similarly, I just feel like some of these state parks are neglecting things like basic trail systems and maintaining biodiversity and not even managing, say, deer populations that are eating the heck out of the biodiversity again, so we can pour money into, you know, fancy rock work for the city people. And just, that is what I'd like to see state park support going toward, is actually preserving the landscape and the ecosystem, not just making it a giant outdoor gymnasium. But kind of on the same line as Edge, but I just really wish we could put more money into the actual teaching and outreach and what the landscape is there for. I'll shut up now.
Well, while I've got a microphone here, I want to compliment Rockbridge Memorial State Park staff. I was there yesterday and for the first time saw the historical trail, and that is beautifully done. And I'm very impressed because I'm into that sort of thing, and the settlement history of the area and the human history is very well done. And you know, it's excellent. At the same time, I'd sure like to see that sort of thing about the natural history of the area. And that's something I think we need to work on with state parks, that we are there to preserve and protect the reason the parks are there in the first place. And it wasn't because people were there. For the state historical sites, yes. For parks, we have some custodial responsibilities, and building cabins on top of glades is not one of them.
And Jim, that historical trail at Rockbridge, was that, I don't know if you'll know this, I'm trying to remember. Como Trails Association, did they help build that?
No, it was done by Roxy, who's the park
Roxy?
specialist, and
Okay.
Steve Ferguson, who's a volunteer.
Steve.
It's just signs that have small, I guess, 8x11 signs on posts that explain, you know, the spring, the blacksmith shop history. Like
Yeah,
so, but
yeah, no, we
yeah,
walked.
that history trail has been in the works for at least 10 years.
You
So,
know, it's beautifully
It's
done. It's
now.
very, very well done. I had trouble birding because I had to stop and read every word. And, you know, they just, it's really, it's one that needs to have some publicity because I think it's a model of what can be and should be done in a lot of parks. And in addition to a history trail, that one is, a natural history trail of the same quality would be appropriate for several of our parks.
anything else? Anybody else?
Trying to think of how we would go about that, but Kendra, I assume we could mention to Ken the concerns about the cabins in the glade and see if he's involved in
Yeah,
the cabin placement at Current River.
yeah, no, I put a note, I'm like, we
Mhm.
him.
Okay. Any other questions? Anybody have anything else they want to bring up? Well, I'd like to thank Shirley and Kendra for spending their time with us. We can clap. I don't know if they can hear us, but.
Thank you.
And for Nancy for putting this together. So if anybody doesn't have anything, again, Christmas bird count next month, Page in January. I'm not sure what we've got going on in February, but it'll be something. So, so if anybody doesn't have anything else, I guess I'll just go ahead and close out the meeting.
Okay, thank you,
And
Jim.
thanks for coming.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.